welcome to For the Love of Nature, a podcast where we tell you everything you need to know about nature, and probably more than you wanted to know. I'm Laura.
And I am Katy. And this intro music is brought to you by Dracinia.
Ruined!
Sanitaria, aka my lucky bamboo plant. I had to break into the plant wave again. It's really fun. Okay, I can turn this off now. Anyway.
Well, hey, everybody.
And this episode, we're actually live streaming, and it's still working, so that's good. That's a positive thing. So, but this one I am very, very excited for because we're talking about birds, and we have a special guest that Laura and I have known for
Since
over
2008.
Well, yeah, I guess 2008.
14 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 14 years. 14 years. A long freaking time. So we all went to undergraduate together, and it's Allison Black, and I can call her the birder because she is under the definition in Merriam's dictionary of birder. If you look up birder, you will see Allison in there.
Yeah, it doesn't get more legit than that.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
So this should be really fun. And I'm
When are we going to get to call you Dr. Black?
So that's technically already taken by my sister, but hopefully I'll be able to.
Oh, that's right.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Things take time.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah, I believe it.
Well, we're going to talk about birds, and I have my tit mug to clarify. Bird tit.
Right, because some people are only going to be listening to this over audio.
Yes.
Yeah, my parents are going to be
You can't
listening
see.
to this, so
It's a naughty bird mug.
It
I have
is.
the same mug. Should have
All
brought
right.
it.
I do too. I do. Right. I'm eating out of a different mug.
I have a gold one. It's got golds on it.
Yay!
I brought my thermos to keep my drink cold. To keep my drink cold because I knew it wouldn't stay cold in a mug.
Genius.
Do you have nature news, Laura?
Yes, I do, everyone. So it's really not new news. Actually, this article came out in 2011, but it's news to us.
It's news to us.
And probably news to you. Holy cow, the article is called first of all, it's from the Daily Mail in the UK, and it's it's a very long title, Cut Up and Boiled to Feed Street Children. Horrific fate of Victorian murder victim whose skull was found in David Attenborough's garden.
What? David Attenborough.
Yeah.
The voice. The
Sir
voice
Attenborough.
of nature. Yeah, Sir Attenborough. The voice of nature.
So,
Dead people.
Basically.
Well, I will say this is finally my murder nature.
Yeah, the crossover. We should probably do a crossover episode one day.
Right?
If we get David on here to interview, that'd be even better.
I better hurry up. He's up there.
Yeah, right.
Probably booked out for years. Anyway, so the garden for American listeners, the UK, when they say garden, they mean the entire yard, not an actual garden. Although the article doesn't specify, could have been his actual garden. Who knows? Anyway, they found a skull there. And it was of widow Julia Martha Thomas, age 55, who was attacked in 1879 by her maid, Kate Webster, who pushed her down the stairs, strangled her, chopped up her body, boiled it, and gave the drippings to local children to eat.
The drippings?
The drippings.
She said
That's
the background
so
check on that
disgusting.
maid first. Woof.
And let that be a
Clearly.
lesson to you.
Where's HR? Yeah.
That was a quote from the article, mind you. It couldn't get any better than that. Yikes! So, that murderer was sent to the gallows, back in the day.
Okay, because that was my next question, because I didn't read it all the way.
Which is
I just
actually
wanted
pretty
to-
rare for women to have been held, like, for murder and
Responsible?
things. Usually then it was like, they couldn't possibly have
Yeah,
done
no
this.
way a woman could have murdered. Meanwhile, all the women in the world were like, yeah, we can.
Definitely not us.
So, they found it when workmen were digging up to do a building extension on his home, and they just were like, whoops, a skull. Gave it to the coroner, and then they were like, holy cow, this is the skull. I don't know how they figured that out.
For as much as I like murder, like not murdering, but like murder movies and stuff, and I do want to say that would be amazing to find, but also like terrifying. Like as cool as it would be, I guess it was enough history has passed, because it's not like you're gonna run into her relatives. You know what I mean? Like,
you can find out all sorts of stuff about who was the person who got murdered, who was the person who was the murderer. It gets freaking brutal. Like, they knew it was her for lots of reasons. They started with, of course, like, you know, white female of menopausal age, yada yada. Then they did some carbon dating, but then things started to get more clear because it seems that the lady used a razor to do stuff, so probably left marks.
Yeah.
Yikes. So please go read it's a pretty long article. Definitely worth the read.
It's the drippings for me.
Oh, that word is so
That's
specific.
the anti.
Like,
it's too much like Thanksgiving. Like
Happy Thanksgiving.
Like
the dripping. Ew.
Cute.
Alrighty. Well, do we want to talk about birds now? Because I'm very excited to talk about
what's
birds.
Specifically about birds?
Just
birding.
Just
birds in general? Birding.
Yeah,
There's
birding.
a difference there, man. There's a difference.
Well, we're going to be talking some about birds in general. Because to talk about
to
birding,
lay the groundwork.
Yeah, you got to talk about a little bit about birds.
But this isn't like an ornithology lecture.
Please,
God, no.
Right.
Just kidding.
Listen, we all lived through it. So, okay, let me go ahead and read Allison's bio. So let's see here. So Allison, this is always the worst part for the guests to listen to themselves.
Yep.
But so Allison Black, she is a native from. Wait, what do they call you guys from Connecticut? What is
Connecticution?
What? Cutians?
Connecticutians.
I would have definitely said of Connecticutans.
Connecticut.
I would have said Connecticut.
Or
Connecticut
nutmeggers.
is way
Because
cooler.
we're the nutmeg state, so. Or the Constitution state.
I did not
but
know
I don't think
that.
they call us Constitution.
I didn't know that. Nutmeg, like the spice, comes from Connecticut.
Sure. Uh-huh.
Oh,
I think
maybe.
it's a tree.
Always
I think
figured
it's
nutmeg
nutmeg
would be
tree.
exotic.
Something to do with the tree. Like they hid the Declaration of Independence in a tree or something like that, and so we were called the
something
nutmeg
like
state.
that. Gotcha.
So
The
not
whole
just
made of
spice.
that.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Well, this Connecticut person. So she began birding after taking an ornithology course while completing her undergraduate degree. This is where we all met. She has turned her love into birds into a career, working in various roles for nonprofits and state organizations alike. She currently works as a certified protected species observer for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, spending weeks out at sea surveying for seabirds, marine mammals, and sea turtles. Allison is the founder and compiler of the Norwich Christmas Bird Count, and serves on COA's workshop committee. When not on a ship somewhere in the ocean, Allison resides in Norwich, Connecticut with her husband, Ryan. Welcome, Allison.
Welcome.
And we are very casual. She can interrupt us at any point in time. Because Laura and I just will keep talking.
Yes.
So
Some things never change.
So, right? So, well, speaking of, so we already said it a couple times that how we all met. We all met in undergrad.
We all lived on the same
And
floor, didn't we? Did we live on the same floor?
No, you and I lived on
That's
the
right.
same
I
floor.
was
Laura
I was next door.
You were in Woolman.
Yeah, you were next door. But then okay, so Laura, do you remember how you met Allison?
Yes.
Oh yeah, me and
Yes.
Allison met first.
Pre-college,
Yes, you
technically.
Yes, pre-college on Facebook
In a chat.
in like a hey, we're coming to Malone group.
Yes, I
Yeah,
was thinking
yeah.
about this the other day.
And we connected because we both love horses and we were both going to be zoo bio majors.
And Laura was like, be my friend. And I was like, okay.
yeah.
Somebody was like, horse girl. Laura's like, this is it.
I'm in.
This is it, my first friend.
Same major, both liked horses, and we're going to the same school. Neither of us who knew anyone there.
Done deal.
And I was determined that I would find at least someone that I could look like when I got there. I wouldn't be completely out, like, I would have something to hold on to.
Something to hold on to. Someone to hold on to.
Yep. And then Katy, I think we met
guess,
through being on the same floor my freshman year.
Yeah. So you would have just kind of showed up.
Mhm.
And
Actually, I showed up first because I was there for preseason cross-country camp.
Right.
Oh, yeah, you were. You would have been. And then...
And even if you weren't cross-country, you still would have been there first because of freshmen.
Fair point.
Oh, because you...
Well, no, I was a
historian.
CA.
I was going to say,
I actually would have been there. Yeah, I actually would have been there first because I... Wait, no. I wasn't a CA my sophomore year.
I forgot about that.
I was, junior. But yeah, so anyway. And then you ran cross country with my was best friend, then traitor because she married my brother. No, I actually love my brother. But so you ran cross country with my sister-in-law, and then because you were a zoo bio major, we ended up all in a bunch of the same classes. If not the same classes, at least like the same grouping of people who we all shared in our torturous
Very
adventure
special group
with each
of
other.
folks, for sure.
It was
part of the study group for sure.
Definitely for Gen Chem at least.
Yeah. I sometimes still quote that study session because that's when we decided that sin came into the world math came into the world when Eve sinned.
Clearly. Because we all hate math. Alrighty. So do we want to Laura, sorry, we're reading off a Google Doc, and Laura's like highlighting stuff.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
3 off with my highlighting.
It did. I was like, I don't know where I left off. But in undergrad, this is where we all started birding. So you two were in this. No, Laura and I were in the same ornithology class.
Yes,
and
that's
then
right.
Allison, you took it the year after. So we had Goff Jr.
Yep.
As our professor.
The lesser
and
Dr. Goff, as we call them, greater and lesser.
lesser.
Yeah.
Dr. Goff,
guy.
lesser.
It was fun. I liked having him.
Oh, it was a crazy ornithology class.
Well, because ornithology, it is not an easy class to pass. Let me just tell you. So for people who are like, oh, it's just birds. Listen, it is not just birds whenever you take it with the Goffs. It is intense.
Yeah.
Like
we almost died one day. Actually, multiple times. We almost died.
Many times.
In lab because he braked one time so hard we all flew out of our seats because no one was buckled in the 15 passenger.
So it turns out both Goffs do that because I had the same experiences and I was always driving the second van and saving our lives by braking in time to not smash into the van in front of us.
Yikes.
So, yeah. Red tail hawk. Uh-oh, better
he braked so hard. Well, we were like, what is it? Expecting to see like an eagle or something crazy. And he was like, it's the first robin of spring.
Yeah. Which it was, like he did it on purpose and it was really funny. So we all ended up laughing.
And then another time he almost backed us into Lake Erie.
And it was like 30 degrees out. Like it was cold. So
we were like,
that wasn't
stop. We saw a dead cow once. We saw a dead cow, like
which we're pretty sure was a ritual sacrifice. So we're
so weird. What a weird class.
So Ohio, anything.
It was
goes.
lab again. We're driving out there, and he starts telling us about the facts, how this is like the Wiccan capital of the world,
and then we see a dead cow in the woods, which was odd because it was in the woods
with a circle, like it was cut, like a perfect circle cut out. Yeah, something. It was definitely some sort of creepy ritual.
No offense to any Wiccans out there. We were just freaked out at the time because we were all in like our little Christian ornithology class.
Your little binoculars, just walking around looking for birds.
Yeah, just being so innocent. So we ended up going to McGee Marsh for our like big birding trip. But then Allison, so you were the year, like I said, behind us.
Yeah, freaking trumped us. We were like, yes, we'll stay an extra week after school just to go birding.
To go to
I didn't realize that you guys
which
did
is
that.
an incredible place.
I mean, yeah, McGee's amazing, for sure.
Yeah.
So McGee, real quick, it's the there's in the flyway within the U.S. where birds, whenever they're migrating up to Canada, there's a point in Ohio where the land is very, very close to Canada. And so McGee Marsh sits right there. And so millions of birds on a good year, millions of birds stop here. Yeah, they just get stalled for a bit before they get all fattened up before they take the journey over the lakes. And so you go here. And I mean, it's like Nat Geo photographers. It is insane the number of bird species you can spot here in a matter of like just a day.
In close proximity too. That's one of the draws of it.
Yeah. And like being surrounded, what I loved was like there were so many amazing birders there who were so like, we're a community. I can say I feel like I am part of this community now. We are.
Everyone is welcome.
And we all help each other out.
Yeah.
Like, there's that bird. Oh my gosh, did you guys see that? And like everyone is all Yeah,
and it's very quiet too, which is weird for how many people that are there. Everybody is.
You talk too loudly, and you're
silent.
gonna get shushed.
Like golf.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is like golf.
Yeah. No, kind of. You just mouth words like Kentucky warbler, and everyone's like,
yeah, just
but silently.
Everybody pointing,
Yep.
and you just have to guess, like, over the expression of face, like, is it like a dumb bird, or people are like,
yeah,
and freaking out. It's got to be something
it's like subtle but excited.
Yeah, and then that's where we went. But then, like Laura said, we kind of got trumped, and you guys went to the Everglades.
We did,
which is such a difference.
It was a heck of a trip. But that's the trip that really sunk me into birding. Like the class for sure was great, but that trip was. What did me in, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That'd be like, somebody like take you to the cloud forest of Costa Rica. I dare you not to birding.
Yeah.
I mean, being trapped in a van with people for 27 hours straight is not the best way to foray into it, but it definitely added to the overall experience.
All stuck together.
Yeah. Yikes.
So then after that, I read a little bit of your bio, but walk us through. So you went from bird nerd in undergrad, and then just walk us through real quick where you went after that.
Before that, I still I never expected this was the path that you would take.
You and me both.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I always figured that you would end up doing something with mammals.
Yeah, for sure. Like I remember being in that
equine stuff
and,
or something.
Like being more excited about the deer that were coming into the feeder that we were sitting in than the bird. Like I have photos of it on early Facebook. Like, look at the deer at the bird feeder in ornithology class. And here we are.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of little steps. I'll try to some more generally, but so I had a job in zookeeping right after I graduated, and that's what I was hoof stock and all that kind of thing. And then I had an accident. My shoulder dislocated and fell out while I was on the job, and I had to get surgery.
Fell out. My shoulder fell out.
Yeah, I remember you had an injury, but I didn't remember why.
Well, for this time, I was just trying to shut a truck door as it was moving, and it just twisted right out. So that was anyway.
Ouch.
So that happened, and at that point, I had gotten into birds a little bit more. So ornithology was right as I was graduating. I don't remember if that was for you guys, but it was one of the last classes I took basically before I graduated.
Yeah, for me it was too.
So it was birds are cool. You kind of get into that sort of thing, and we can get more into the aspects of birding that sunk me, and I'm sure also draw other people in later too. But I didn't, when you graduate and you're like, I like this thing, but I already have a job lined up. This is what I'm going to do. Where do you go?
Or
from
is
there?
that a career?
Right. Kind of. And there wasn't really any exposure to careers in ornithology, I think, at that point for us.
No.
And I think just in general for undergrads, unless you're exposed to people who do it other than professors, you just don't know about it. And that goes for a lot of different professions, So when I had my surgery and everything, it kind of gave me the chance to sort of reevaluate what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. So that's kind of what brought me to grad school, and then focusing on birds as a project is really what got me into seabirds in general, but I also obviously love all birds. And then just kind of working different field positions. There's a chronic cycle of working short-term field positions and sort of figuring out what you want to do. And those led to longer term positions and sort of settling where I am now with contracting with NOAA, which is my favorite so far, I gotta say.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
NOAA's a great organization, it seems like.
For sure.
Yeah, so can you go ahead and tell the listeners, because it is a really cool job, and I read it in your bio that you're going out and you're doing surveying, but go ahead and just tell us a little bit more about that, because it is really awesome.
About being a bird observer.
Yeah. So my actual job title with NOAA as a contractor is seabird / marine mammal observer. So I do look for the whales and the dolphins and that.
He only wants to talk about the birds, though.
I mean, there's a lot of money in marine mammal protection and that sort of things.
Yeah.
So NOAA, for those that don't know what NOAA encompasses, obviously oceanographic is in the title. And they have a fleet of research vessels that do just amazing cutting edge research on all of the U.S. coasts and the East Coast, West Coast, in the Gulf of Mexico, up into Canadian waters, that sort of thing.
I definitely think it's one of the least known about government organizations, and they do such cool stuff.
They really do.
Like Allison and I, we were talking about it like before we started all of this. It's just like we never really knew, unless it's like a weather update, you don't really know much about NOAA.
I was just gonna say I knew a ton about NOAA, but only because of in high school my Earth space science or system science teacher was a meteorologist, and we were like submitting data to NOAA and stuff.
That's cool.
But it's
That's
all about
cool.
climate. Like,
it's
the
right.
climate aspect, not the ocean aspect.
Right. So yeah, a lot of people know NOAA through the National Weather Service because that's their operation, right? And they obviously do a lot of interesting stuff with hurricane research, and NOAA also has planes that they fly, and those are the ones that fly into hurricanes, the hurricane hunters. Like that's all part of their organization too. So they do a lot of fun things.
Really, fun. Yeah.
But my aspect, I contract out of the Northeast Fisheries Office. So I think NOAA, people forget too that NOAA does a lot of fisheries research. Anything that you can catch, or they do all the moderations and trying to think of the right word here, like limits on things, species catch and that sort of thing. And they have a lot of control over what happens for drilling and offshore wind energy work too. And I can explain a little bit more about that in a minute. But my main role is when these research vessels, which depends on the vessel, they have 20 some odd vessels. Most of the ones that I've contracted on are between 200 and 300 feet. So they're a good size ship. We'll go out for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And usually there's a number of different scientists on the boat. So each cruise has like a project, they call it. So they're doing like a certain project. And a lot of the time, the project that I'm working on is called NOAA's Ecosystem Monitoring Project. So they call it the EcoMons.
Okay.
So we'll sail in a good year, spring, summer, and fall EcoMons, and they sample fish stock and water quality at set stations because I'm contracted to the Northeast office, the Northeast East Coast, which will range from as far south as the Outer Banks in North Carolina all the way up to Canadian waters in the Gulf of Maine, basically.
Wait, that's misleading. Northeast, the Outer Banks. You're like,
yeah. I mean, you got to draw a line somewhere. But if you look on a map, relatively speaking, it's a little further north than like, I don't know, Florida.
Yeah.
Florida gets the southeast office, and the Gulf of Mexico is also the southeast office. So they have a lot to cover. So we do the Northeast, and these boats will do these sampling stations all the way to the continental shelf, up to 200 miles-ish offshore. No land in sight often.
That's terrifying.
Definitely the first time as we were pulling away from the boat, or pulling away from the dock, I was like, we're in it now. Like, this boat is not turning around.
Yeah, that's how
I took it out. It was like too bad. Like watching it kind of disappear, and I'm like, am I seasick? I don't even know what's happening. Like, this is wild.
Am I seasick?
Because you don't really realize you're seasick.
Not the first time
until you're like, oh yeah, this is it. Here we are. So yeah. So anyway, we're doing these sampling stations for the most part. Obviously, every project is different. I've been on some that are specific to marine mammal surveys and that sort of thing. But when I sail for the EcoMons, I'm a seabird and marine mammal observer. So in between those stations, we're commuting to the next one. They're just like set GPS points. It's not like a physical station at water. It's just like, boop, we're there. And I survey for basically anything I can identify. Again, any sort of seabird. Sometimes we'll get birds that land on the ships during migration, which is always really exciting because you just never know what's going to show up.
Yeah, I've seen like articles about that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I keep a list of, what I see. It's kind of fun.
A little tired.
I know.
I was going to say, I would have
so
ride too. Can't blame them.
But there's
there's
quite a bit of diversity. It's just amazing that, you wake up the next day and there's like 5 different warbler species on the boat that were migrating overnight and just showed up on the boat and
needed a peek. Do you have like a little do you have like a do you guys do any rehab, what happens if a bird lands on your boat?
It depends. For the most part, I would say they're just resting and they take off. But if a bird is landing on this little boat, it's landing for a reason usually. Bad weather, it's really tired, something like that. Most of the observers that I work with, because there's usually 2 of us that work on off ships, will bring mealworms, dried mealworms. And
That's
this
awesome.
one time last fall, it's fine. We're just the weirdest people on the boat for sure with our high protein mealworm.
That's what I was gonna ask that that too. If there's like between you and versus the other scientists, you guys like are kind of like, oh, those people. Because I feel like being a bird person, you're just automatically going to be like, oh, the bird.
I mean,
the bird
there's
people.
definitely like people love having us on board because whenever we see like a whale, we call over the radio and everyone gets to run out, see the humpback whale. And so, you know,
fair enough,
people enjoy having us on the boat for sure. But when it comes to the birds, like, because birds are generally more difficult to identify than the number of like whales, like you can identify the
at least seabirds. Yeah.
So most of the time, the people that I work with are specifically birders who also learn marine mammals, like me. So we get really into it, obviously. But when we had, for example, we had a juvenile cedar waxwing that landed on the boat last fall. I don't know if you saw, I chronicled the story of Toby. We called him a cedar waxwing, SEA, cedar waxwing, because he hung on the boat.
I mean, a little sailor hat.
Kinda, though. Like, he stayed on the boat for 4 days, and we fed him blueberries from the buffet in the galley. We were literally stealing blueberries from the salad bar, and the other observer also had like,
I get your strength back.
Kinda. Like, we noticed a very remarkable difference from his first couple days on the boat to when the last couple days, and we just like left the open container of blueberries at one point, and he would just fly down and get, like, it was great. And I swear he like associated this with food after a couple. You know, you try not to anthropomorphize, but I think he knew. He was like, yes, the blueberry people. You know, you're coming up on the boat. So, you know, we have instances like that. And then we got close to shore and he disappeared one night and we were like, I hope he's on his way to Florida right now or something like that, right? So
yeah, we
get some fun things like that. But like I said, I've been on some cruises that, and they're not like Disney cruises, people. Like, it's research cruise that are specifically for marine mammal surveys. And in those instances, I work usually just as a seabird observer because we have a whole separate marine mammal crew that's using high-powered binoculars to spot and things like that. So it just depends on what the project is, and that will also dictate how long we're out at sea and what kind of vessel we use and that kind of stuff. The Certified Protected Species Observer is a recent certification that I got to contract with private companies to, these are contracts that they won from the government, usually from BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management, to develop either offshore wind turbines or oil drilling. It just depends on what it is. Gotcha. But in those contracts, it's required by NOAA/BOEM, basically just the government in general, to survey those areas for anything that falls under the Endangered Species Act or the Marine Mammal Protection Act. So
yeah, I know that they have stuff like that on land. I never thought about how they must have. I mean, obviously it makes sense.
Yeah,
because we had Kate on from ODOT, and she talked about way early on the podcast with birds and bats and everything that they survey. I don't even remember what episode.
Yeah, I know that. Or any building projects. Yeah, you always have to do like a survey before you.
Yeah, so it's required for those sort of things too. So that's a separate certification. I haven't gone out one of those boats yet. Those tend to be longer stints, more like 6 weeks ish. So that's but another component of, you know, identification skills, basically, to be able to contract privately to do basically the same thing. They don't care about birds, unfortunately, when it comes to those sort of things. It's just marine mammals and sea turtles for that. So
gotcha.
I'll have to
and who certifies you?
There's a number of different organizations, but I did mine through one of the major ones, which is RPS Consulting. It's a fairly intensive certificate program. I was, you know, because sometimes they're like, just go get this little certificate. Yeah. No, so actually almost all the bulk of the information is about the regulations and how things work. And the ID stuff was very actually limited because it's like, it's a smaller number of species that you actually have to stop for.
Really
Only the toothed whales and dolphins, really. They don't care about dolphins, I should say, just toothed whales are the ones that are affected most by the sound that's created because of the frequency. So those are the ones that they
fascinating.
Yeah. So sperm whales, basically sperm whales. You got to be able to identify a sperm whale, which thankfully are one of the easiest whales to identify.
That's what I was just gonna say. I was like, thankfully, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. So I'm excited to do stuff like that. But yeah, that's just spent a lot of time with my binoculars on the top of boats.
You're just birding for your job. That's so cool. I'm jealous. I mean, I get to do birding for my job too, but it's not the bulk of my job.
Yeah, this is literally all I do. But it's so much fun because you get to go out, you know, you get to see things that people just are not going to be able to see unless they're on a boat 200 miles offshore. And I like the setup of it, that I work, 2 to 3 weeks at a time, a couple times throughout the year. And government contracting is, you make enough money to be able to work those and then stop there. So I really appreciate that.
That's
because
cool.
That allows me to do other things that I want to do. And, like go birding outside of that.
On land.
Yeah. Just do more birding.
Yeah. But it's so much fun. Like, I can't believe I get to do this for a job, and you meet such cool people too, because all the different projects are like, when we did the one project that was specifically about marine mammals, you're like, look at these whale nerds on the boat, because the bird people are one thing, but the whale huggers, that's like a different set.
The whale huggers.
But it's just so much fun. Like, everyone is really conservation minded, and the people that work on boats generally, especially the observers, tend to be younger. So it's a lot of fun to be able to interact with like people your age that are interested in the same things that you are. And it teaches really good get along skills, because you're literally all in the same boat and you have to get along because you're literally stuck together out at sea.
A number of times I freaking heard that during the pandemic.
Yeah. So I get to use it literally.
And you're like, no, but really.
But it's still,
I guess it makes sense about younger, because probably older people are more like, I got to stay online with my family. Like, you can't be gone for weeks at a time.
It can get a little rough out there, and you have to be able. Part of the NOAA stuff is we have to put on these immersion suits that are required by the Coast Guard in less than a minute. And I'm sure it's a little fuzzy in some parts, but like, you have to be able to get that on if you wanted to survive if something happened out there. Things like that, and. Like I said, it gets choppy, and being away for 2 to 3 weeks at a time is definitely not everyone's ideal. But if you have kids, what are you supposed to do in that situation? So you meet some interesting folks that are dedicated to this sort of lifestyle, and then you meet people like me that are just like, going out for a couple weeks and then come back.
That's a lot of fun. Well, speaking about birding, then, do we want to get into birding?
Always.
Like birding. All right, so we're just going to ask, we're going to talk about kind of just advice. So birding really is a lot of fun. It's a hobby of all of us, like the three of us. And hopefully after we're done with this, we can convince you that birding is, first of all, it's an easy hobby. Second of all, it's probably my only hobby where I've almost died multiple times doing a hobby that should not be dangerous. And it's every time
that's the key there. Should not be dangerous, because you could get into bullfighting.
Yeah, should not.
As a hobby.
Yes. It shouldn't be dangerous.
But it's probably also one of the fastest growing hobbies, especially during the pandemic.
Yes,
oh, yeah. Besides bread making, I
think we're all over that now. Thank you. No more sourdough starter.
No more sourdough. All right, so we have some questions that we're just going to run through and ask Allison, and Laura and I'm sure will jump in here and give some answers too, because again, we're all bird nerds. All right, so first off, Allison, why should someone even want to become a birder?
I mean, the answer seems obvious. I'm just kidding, it's not obvious. I mean, so I feel like we should clarify first between birder and bird watcher.
Yes.
So for me, because people have asked me what's the difference. For me, bird watching is more of a passive action. It's the old ladies with their 9,000 bird feeders in their backyards, and have you seen the eagles people that you meet on the trail?
Oh my gosh.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like that's more of a bird watcher who maybe incidentally or loves the hummingbirds, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're more of like a passive enjoyment.
Yeah, exactly. It's not they don't really care what they see, just it's a part of their life.
And when we say, did you guys see the eagles? Like 90% of the time it's a red-tailed hawk or not anything other than an eagle. Yeah. Like it's never an eagle.
Yeah, it's fine. We love those people. But to separate bird watching versus birding, I feel like it's important to separate those categories. Whereas birding, I feel like, is more of a active thing. Active.
Purposeful.
Verb. It's a verb.
We've made a conscious effort to actually go out and look at birds.
So it's like a bird. It's a feathery scavenger hunt.
Yes, and actually, I have a quote about that. We'll get to that in a few. But
good.
So birding is chasing a rarity or going to visit your favorite hotspot or park, wherever that might be, to specifically look for birds. And I feel like that does really separate a lot of people. You can be someone who really likes hiking and like maybe you look at birds along the way, but there are people who are like, I'm only hiking because I am trying to see birds, like the birds came first and then just the exercise kind of came second after that. So it just depends on what you consider yourself.
And it really is, like we talked earlier about like the community aspect of it, because one of the craziest things, there is, I think pretty much everywhere in the United States, you will be able to sign up for an email listserv somewhere about birds in your area to get alerts about rare birds or just random birds that you've seen in your area. And it is insane the emails you get. Because I know whenever Laura and I lived in Arkansas, over 4 years ago now, when those snowy owls were landing in Arkansas, and like people were losing their minds.
Or like in your neck of the woods, the stellar seagull. I'm so freaking jealous.
Hey.
Oh yeah.
That was fun.
And so people go out and they find these birds, and then they send out emails about them to these listservs and stuff, and it shoots out, and then next thing you know, bam, there's 100 birders that show
from a different
up.
state. I mean,
Yeah, the seagull's a good example of that, at least in recent memory. And the seagull is the reason that I was quoted in the Merriam-Webster dictionary about being a birder. So shout out to the seagull for that one. But yes.
Thanks, Stellar Seagull.
Thanks, Stellar Seagull. I totally agree. Like the community aspect of it is just great because you meet, like I said, other people that are like you or have similar interests, and you guys talking about when you went to McGee, like everyone is there to help you find the birds and that sort of thing. And like just anybody can be a birder, literally, and I think that makes it
of any age,
experience,
background, ability.
Yep, exactly. It definitely is accessible, and I feel like that's really important.
Yes.
And that's one thing that I love about birds, honestly, is that they're literally everywhere. You have peregrine falcons in cities, and albatrosses off of Antarctica, and birds in sand dunes and grasslands, and I mean everywhere you go there's a bird. Everywhere. There's a bird for that.
You can't get away from
basically
them.
Yeah.
Dude, that needs to be a shirt. There's a bird for that. That needs to be a shirt.
There's a bird for
but
that.
It makes a difference compared to basically any other taxa. I mean, yes, there's plants.
No, it definitely is.
But it's not the same. We're talking about conspicuous.
Those plants.
Yeah, no one's going to look at plants in Antarctica anyway, right? But there's albatrosses everywhere down there and that sort of thing. So, we're talking about charismatic megafauna here, things that people know. And everybody knows somebody who loves birds. They're like, oh, my aunt, loves birds, or I have a cardinal that visits my feeder. Everybody has some relationship to birds. They just don't really realize it until they stop to think about it. So, things to think about. But
well, that's a good segue though into what are some of the fun aspects of birding besides the community part.
So the community part is a big one for me, but a lot of that is destinations. I mean, like I was kind of giving a little habitat run through there. You can go just about anywhere. If you want to go on vacation in, I don't know, Fiji, there's going to be birds there too. And you can incidentally go birding while you're in a tropical paradise kind of place. There's a lot of opportunity for that. Anywhere you go to visit your aunt over Thanksgiving, and you can go birding in her local, park or wherever the best hotspot is. And there's just so many opportunities for it. And you can make trips specifically for birding. You can hire guides for it, or you can just do it casually, joining your local Audubon chapter and doing bird walks through that. And it just gets you outside and gets you to see things.
Or like your local nature center, like in...
Hey, exactly.
Join our birding program.
No, it really does get you to connect with people. And obviously the pandemic was, created an interesting dynamic where we were all like, let's get outside, but not too close to each other, but also like seeing things together, and then also birding from home, and, people that have more difficulty accessing wild places. Like there's definitely a spot for everyone to be able to go. And I think that just makes it so much more fun that everyone can be able to get into this hobby. Hobby seems like a shallow word for me at this point, but
it does.
For some people, it is just
lifestyle.
right?
Yeah,
it's a lifestyle.
Birding is a lifestyle,
and like everybody has a favorite bird. If you think about it, you come up with a favorite bird. Even if it's just cardinals and bald eagles, that's fine. Everybody's got a favorite bird. But
I guess we'll accept those.
Yeah. We'll get to everybody's favorite birds after this, right? But I did want to share with you guys, because I was thinking about this a lot, and Have you guys seen the movie The Big Year? Did you see it?
No, but I know about it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So you guys got to watch the movie. It's anyone who's listening to this, if you have not seen The Big Year, it's fantastic. So it's based on a book, which is a true story about 3 different birders that did, I believe it's the 1998 Big Year, which is trying to see as many bird species as you can in a single calendar year for North America. For us, that was their big year. The book is fantastic. It's really well written. It's written by someone who is an actual journalist, but sort of got into birds through different interviews and things they did. So it's really well written, but I would recommend watching the movie first because it's definitely Hollywoodized. And so when you see a movie first and get
Makes
into
sense.
it, then you go back and read the book. It doesn't ruin the movie as much for you, you know? But the movie has the 3 main characters are Jack Black, Owen Wilson, and Steve Martin, it's a pretty stellar cast in that regard.
Yeah, great cast.
But there's a quote from the book, and I wanted to read it because it really answers the question of why someone should become a birder. And it's always stuck with me. It's a little long, so just bear with me, but it's good. Okay, so this is the quote. Birding is hunting without killing, preying without punishing, and collecting without clogging up your home. Take a field guide into the woods and you're more than a hiker. You're a detective on a backcountry beat, tracking the latest suspect from Mexico, Antarctica, or even the Bronx. Spend enough time sloshing through swamps or scaling summits or shuffling through beach sand, and you inevitably face a tough question. Am I a grown-up birder or just another kid on a treasure hunt? During certain periods of our lives, the world believes it's perfectly acceptable to collect rocks or seashells or baseball cards. The truth is that everyone has obsessions. Most people manage them. Birders, however, indulge them. So that's a quote. I thought it was pretty.
That is that is why I bird.
Yes.
I love the concept of collecting.
Yes.
Like the hunt.
It's addicting.
It's about the hunt. And
It is.
I actually like
It's
as
addicting.
absurd as it is. Like unless you get it, you don't get it. Like. But that you actually there's literally like an adrenaline rush of like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this freaking bird before. What is it? What could it be? And you get really excited. It is a straight up scavenger hunt. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been into like scavenger hunts and hunting for things and collecting things. Yeah, I never grew up. I am just a kid on a scavenger hunt. It just happens to be birds now.
Right, exactly. And that was really another reason that sunk me into it is when we went to the Everglades. And there were a couple of people in my class that were already sort of birders or at least, you know, knew the concept. And they kept a list of what birds we were seeing. And I was like, oh, we were keeping track of this? And they're like, oh, I've never seen that bird before. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And then that was when I learned about The Big Year. That movie had come out because the book was written, you know, right after The Big Year. But the movie came out in 2011, I think. So that was right before my senior year. And
makes sense.
I was like, there's competitions about this? And so like that just upped the ante. It was like, I can see more birds than other people. Like, let's go. I want to see more birds than other people.
Yeah.
And, you know, people can do a state big year or even a county big year, things like that. And I have not gotten to the level of like obsessive, like I need to see the most birds in my state and things like that, because that is a full-time job.
Mine's not as competitive as much as it is for me. It's for mine is like individually competitive.
Right. Same for me.
Like I need to increase it. So like I look at my eBird account and I'm like, all right, I'm doing pretty good. But I'm not like compared to other people.
And it's nice that there are tools like eBird that lets you keep track of that easily. Because when I first started keeping track, it's all in notebooks, and now I'm trying to like convert those lists to eBird, and it's so tedious. And you know, the technology has caught up with what people want to do with it, and that makes it easier. You can literally look at your life list, and you get alerts about species you haven't seen yet. So now you know when the next, you know, slaty-back gull shows up in your neighborhood, you're like, there it is. Here it's in the park. I'll just go look at it. You know, it could be as easy as
slaty-back gull.
We just had our one in Connecticut the other day. It was a big deal. So. That's what came to mind.
It was a big deal. No, it's so funny. And two, I feel like that is a whole nother, like, you are peak birding because you've got like
birding.
You've got the seabird stuff down, and I don't know.
Well, I mean, maybe for my area of the world. Like, if I go to the West Coast, it's like a whole different batch of birds out there that I've not seen.
But still, seabird.
Like I remember specifically in undergrad going to Lake Erie, and like Goff was pretty excited about all these ducks, and we're all like, dude, a duck is a duck. Like, there's no difference in these ducks.
It's a duck.
And the gulls. That's definitely kind of how I feel about gulls, but I'm sure if I lived on the coast, I wouldn't feel that way.
Pennsylvania, is
I don't know.
to your heritage, is a pretty good spot for gulls as well, especially in the winter, because so many of them go to Lake Erie. So anyway.
Well, then let's go ahead. We already kind of talked about the list, but what is a life list, and why should everyone start one pretty much immediately right now? Because we all have it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, mine on eBird is, again, not up to date because I still have to log all my lists from trips before I start.
I still keep it on paper.
Oh, yeah.
I still keep it on paper.
I can't do paper anymore because then I also keep it. It's like too much work. But so I'm like, please don't let this data ever get lost because
mine is all eBird now, but from the past, it's still I haven't.
Yeah.
I don't know where. I know I just pulled mine out the other day, but I have the Sibley's, the book, the bird life list. I have the book form of it.
Oh,
cool. It's around somewhere. I just have to go grab it.
Yeah, mine is like one of these over here. I'm not sure. I've got a couple actually. Oh, it's right there. That's fine. My little life list book. But originally,
so what is a life list?
So it's basically just a list of, and you can make it as much as you want to be. So you can make it the most species you've seen. Some people like to include subspecies because sometimes those subspecies get split into full separate species. Some people like to include color morphs. There's a couple different color morphs of different birds, and that kind of makes it fun.
Yeah.
So I like to keep kind of track of everything.
Wow. I need to get more specific.
Yeah.
Literally. If you're able to identify it to a subspecies or something like that, like I like to make note of that because it can make a difference in the future when they lumped two gull species back together. You lost some.
True, yeah.
So,
I lost one.
They call them the splitters and the lumpers. Some people like to keep all the birds together and like I just saw a red-tailed hawk, like the end. But there's a number of different subspecies of red-tailed hawk and morse, and it gets complicated, but it's as complicated as you want it to be, and that's how people really become experts at birding, is when they're able to identify very specific, again, subspecies or color morphs. And geography, as we all know from taking biology classes, can restrict a bird's range that isn't migratory and things like that. So you get all sorts of fun things in birding. And again, the habitat stuff, you can be like, I keep a life list for anything I've seen in Connecticut, which will limit you to whatever shows up in the state, the rare stuff, but then also the regular breeding birds that show up in the summer months. So life lists are fun because I feel like everyone loves to keep lists of things.
Do you do a general? What's your total? Like, do you know what your total is for just everything?
I still have a lot to add. My eBird says I'm at 450, but it's probably more. I'm actually sure it's more than that because I
was gonna say it has to.
Yeah, it's probably less than 500 at this point because I haven't really done a lot on the West Coast. There's a lot out there, and I haven't done that yet. And this is for North America, I should say. This is just North America. I haven't really birded outside of the country too much, with a couple of small country ones that are like close-ish by. So yeah, some are probably between 450 and 500 at this point. So because I haven't done a lot of international stuff, obviously, if I go to Costa Rica or something like that, you can get 300 birds in 4 days in a trip down there. So I think once that expands. So for me, my life list is basically just North America at this point because it's the easiest one to keep track of right now.
Thankfully, I was enough of a nerd, even in high school, that whenever I started traveling, I was already keeping track. So I have South Africa, Australia,
that's
because,
I for sure could go back. Like, I didn't start keeping a list until McGee Marsh, so that would have been.
I feel like we all have that like breakthrough. It was like that was it. That's when I started keeping track.
That's the list. But I mean, I was IDing birds since I've been a little kid, so I could go back and be like, yes, seen.
Yeah, or I'll like come across a photo that I took
but
at Malone's campus of a red-tailed hawk sitting on the track fence, and I'm like, it's a red-tailed hawk, but like I hadn't taken the ornithology class yet. I just knew it was a red-tailed hawk,
Yeah, like I was IDing birds, but I wasn't counting birds,
and there is a difference there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like I was still I would still say I was birding because I would be looking for birds with binoculars and things like that, but definitely not tracking.
Yeah.
Now I'm obsessed with tracking.
Like putting trackers on birds and like knowing where they're going and that sort of thing. Or
oh, I wish.
Well, there's some fun just the research, and like I said, that's caught up with the fun stuff you can actually see.
Like
birds.
Bird banding and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I've been helping out a little bit with Maryland's doing its breeding bird atlas.
Oh, nice. Yep.
Right now. So they're it's a couple year study where they're keeping track of all the breeding behaviors of every bird basically that you see. Yep. And I think we're in the second year.
Connecticut is just wrapping its up. I think we did an extra year for the pandemic, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like I'm noting behavior too, which I
carrying nesting
really
material, carrying food, eggs and nest,
Yeah.
chicks and nest, all that extra stuff. And that's
Yeah.
I feel like bird watchers can get more into that, because then you keep track of like, they're like, oh yes, the robins nested in my yard again this year, like those sort of behaviors that maybe birders aren't necessarily, they're like, robin, next. Whereas bird watchers are like, what is it doing? Why is it doing that? How long has it been doing
I think
that?
that's true too.
That sort of thing.
We have bluebird monitoring at work too.
That's
We
awesome.
have a bluebird trail. We do that.
Who doesn't love bluebirds, right?
Little bluebirds of happiness.
My mom loves bluebirds. It's a great bird.
All right, so on your life list then, what is the favorite bird that you've seen so far?
So that's
I know.
It's a tough one.
I know.
I
know.
I think one of the things that makes a lifeless bird, and it'll change obviously as you see different birds, I think part of that is the experience that comes along when you see that bird. There's always a good memory.
100%.
Like getting a rental car stuck on a canyon in Arizona because you're trying to see this one little flycatcher that shows up like 5 times ever over the border from Mexico. But like, it's like that sort of story.
Worth it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Got the dang bird, but I had to get the rental car out afterwards, So mine is tied probably between 2 seabirds. One is when I got to see Bermuda petrels, because they're the second most endangered seabird in the world. There's like 300 birds.
I remember you posting those pictures.
Yeah.
So pictures too.
My boyfriend and I at the time had flown to Bermuda during their breeding season because they're also a Lazarus species. They were thought to be extinct for a long amount of time, and then they were resurrected. It turns out they're just very secretive with their breeding, which is probably how they stayed alive all this time. Yeah.
Right.
And obviously they breed only in Bermuda, which makes them vulnerable to obviously anything that affects Bermuda, hurricanes, invasive species, even invasive plants that change the landscape. But we went down to Bermuda to go specifically look for Bermuda petrel in November. And we had been birding around the island a little bit. And we just happened to see a marsh wren on Bermuda, which was only the second time one had ever been seen there. But we get marsh wrens all the time back at home.
That's cool.
So it was like one of those little things along the way. And we put that on eBird. And word gets out fast about rare birds, when they go on eBird. So we were just birding along the airport waiting for a boat trip that we were supposed to go do to go to the islands. And some person like driving down the road, like almost ran their car into us, pulling over, like waving at us. And we were like, this crazy person over here, like waving. And they were like, are you the 2 birders that saw the marsh wren at blah, blah, blah?
That's
carrying scope.
incredible.
We were like, yes. And it turns out it was David Wingate, who is basically the person who is associated with saving Bermuda petrels and their recovery. Like,
yes, it is.
Whoa,
he is
the man himself.
Yeah.
So he invited us back to his house.
About the marsh wren.
So we got in his car with him and his wife and went back to their house, and he like served us tea and like chatted our ears off. And then we went out. Our boat trip ended up getting canceled because of bad weather, but we went out to the one observation spot that you can sort of see them from land. And we got to stand there on the shore with David Wingate and watch, like, I think we totaled at the most at one time was 27 Bermuda petrels, which is like 11% of the population of Bermuda petrels or something like that.
Yeah, right? No,
in the air at one time.
Gosh.
And then he like invited us to dinner the next night, and his wife, she's from like the Netherlands or something, and she told me the secret to winning over a man was making the perfect streusel and like all these interesting things that like we were there for Bermuda petrel, but like so much more out of that experience. So
again, it's the people,
story.
But it's the people. Again, it comes back to like the people that you meet along the way, like
murdered by
David
another
freaking
ornithologist, right? And also that he's a big deal, and everyone else is like, so.
No.
Yeah.
And I literally was like talking to my brother. I was like, we're in David Wingate's car. Like, that's David Wingate. Like, it was almost like a David Attenborough moment at the time because he's so friendly.
It would be totally like, that would be me wandering down a road and then David Attenborough comes over. Or like I'm wandering through Australia and one of the Irwins.
Right. Yeah. For Bermuda, like that's the man, It was so wild.
No, it is.
But my other one, I have to include like the other one that I saw that was most recently for me. One of my most recent lifers was white-tailed tropic bird, which don't really occur.
That is the dumbest name.
Well, if you can, it does have a white tail, at least. Sometimes ornithologists.
What is it? It's a white-tailed tropic bird. It's such a lazy name.
It's they're more of like a subtropic tropic bird. Oh, now that I'm saying it, I can hear it. So
it does sound dumb.
But I happen to be on a boat over Hydrographer Canyon, which is a canyon along the continental shelf.
Gorgeous.
They're beautiful, right?
Laura changed her mind. It might be a dumb name bird, but
it's a dumb name, but it is a gorgeous bird.
So we were like 100 miles offshore, and I was up there all by myself on this marine mammal cruise because the weather was too rough for the marine mammal observers to be on board because they use those high power binoculars. So when we're tossing it, it's not a good time. So they are off effort when the Beaufort, which is the sea state, is too elevated. But the seabirders, we get to be up there in the rough weather because we only have binoculars. So I was just up there by myself, doing my thing, staring at the ocean, trying not to get sick. And just like one tropic bird flies by, like all by itself, dead silent, high in the sky. And I was like, holy, like that is a white-tailed tropic bird. Never seen one before. But you see that, and there's just you're like, oh my God. And there's no one else to share with. And I'm like crow hopping across the bow, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, there's a white-tailed tropic bird.
First of all, that's an amazing term. I'm stealing now, crow hopping in excitement. But also, wait, so where were you that you saw this? Because I see here in its description that it is the national bird of Bermuda and like Hawaii.
Yeah, so they occur Hawaii too. I'm surprised theirs isn't the red-tailed tropic bird. Anyway, but so they're seen on coast, but they're much more of a warmer water bird, and they'll ride the Gulf Stream waters and come up. And because we were in Hydrographer Canyon, which is like a deep well water spot, so there's a lot of upwellings there. So you get a lot of nutrient upcycle, which draws in birds from animals and that sort of thing, and also warmer water. And so that bird was probably had ridden the Gulf Stream up, the warm air and that sort of thing. And it just flies by, and like, that's all you get. Like, I just
way out of
very faint, far away photos, but it's very identifiable. And just the fact that I was like the only one there to like have that, it was like a moment, you're like on the bow of the ship, and crazy weather, and like you
were just like,
yep.
You and that bird had that moment.
And everyone else had seen one on the trip so far because, like I said, we rotate shifts. And one had been seen in a previous shift, and I had missed it because I wasn't on watch. And, like, by the time you get your binoculars and run up to the top of the boat, it's gone. So everyone was like, we hope you see one. And I came down to dinner, and I was like, I saw it! I saw the bird! And everyone was like, ah! So it was just really great. I was so happy for me that I saw this one bird.
You know who would get this? It's those Pokemon Go people. Pokemon Go people.
No, it
in a different way. It's the same feeling, Pokemon Go people. If you're like, I don't understand this birding nonsense. That feeling. It's that feeling.
So you told us the two. Then you had the two that was the best that you have. What was the bird that you haven't seen that you want to see? And Laura already freaking knows mine.
Oh, you have one too? Yeah, so
yes,
mine's wandering albatross. I really want to see albatross.
Oh, me
really
too.
Don't occur on the East Coast.
Any albatross? Have you ever seen any?
No. When I say they don't really occur
albatross
on the East Coast, especially in the Northeast, like they really don't.
That's one of my
especially
favorite
wandering albatross, because they have the longest wingspan on a bird. It's literally like 12 feet long.
That is nuts. I can't even imagine seeing a bird with the wings.
And they're they're enormous, but also fun places. You get to go to fun places to see them.
Yeah, we talked about them in one of our podcast episodes.
Yeah, I talked about an albatross, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if I saw it nesting, not that I would ever
do you guys watch the Royal Albatross Cam, the eBird
one? I totally do. That's what I was going to say. I totally watch albatross cams.
Great.
And how they're like
the little noises, and their little beaks are tapping each other.
So
I just like the story of that one really old lady one who just keeps laying eggs. Yeah.
She's a Laysan albatross, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
she's
I would
still laying eggs.
I would totally, though, just to see, like, the wingspan. Like, just go up and be like, spread your wingies! Like, you just, like...
You probably could.
Not even as big.
I know, but I was going to be like, okay, spread!
You need 2 Katys to measure the...
Yeah.
At least.
More, yeah.
More than 2 Katys. More than 2 Katys. That's another measurement. That's another unit of measurement.
Yes.
More than 2 Katys.
Add to our measurement book.
This albatross is 3 Katys wide.
So what is yours besides the albatross? Was there any other ones that you had?
No, I just want to see wandering albatross.
I just want to see them.
I mean, there's some other fun. I need to go to the tropical jungles and see the, lyrebirds and all the birds of paradise and things like that.
Yeah. What bird would I not want to see?
Yeah.
That'd be a
Pigeons
shorter
don't-
list.
You don't need to see pigeons. Everyone's.
They're so cute, though.
They do have a lot of fun together, but
Yeah.
come on, wandering albatross or a pigeon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tough.
All right, Laura already knows what mine is, but so for, let's see here, 9 freaking years. This is at this point, it's my nemesis bird. Because for 9 years, I have intentionally gone out, been on listservs, have gone out like as fast as I can. As soon as
I need to know, what is it?
Painted bunting.
I beat you.
Oh,
I know,
man.
it's freaking Laura beat
And
me.
you were in Arkansas? Come on.
I was in
in
Maryland.
Texas.
I saw mine.
Yeah, she's in freaking Maryland and sees a freaking painted bunting. And I'm keeping my
So
language
rare.
clean because we have children. Yeah, so rare. And I was in Arkansas for 5 years. Now I've been in Texas for almost 4. Not a freaking one.
Shame on you.
Right, and it's not like I've tried so hard to see a painted bunting, and it has escaped me every freaking time.
I feel
That
like
is my
Florida.
nemesis bird at this point.
I mean, you could practically get a scoop full of them in Florida at people's
a
theaters.
scoop
and that sort
of
of-
buntings.
Who wouldn't want a scoop of painted bunting?
Even like
I would
sherbet,
love
like a
a
bowl of
scoop.
sherbet.
Delicious.
I would love it.
I don't think I have one. There's so many.
Really?
I could choose one from like every continent. Like
What about
Oh,
like
yeah.
what about like
a saw-whet owl? I want to see.
Yeah, that's a good
like
one.
I want to see something like super tiny. I want to see like a great gray owl. I want to see the
Oh.
woodcocks doing their dance.
Oh,
like,
they're so fun.
their
They're doing that now here
aerial
in Connecticut.
dancing. Oh, I want to see it so
Displays.
bad. I've
They
seen
sound-
one, but not their display.
It's really cool. It's kind of a weird noise. Like if you don't I didn't realize what
Yeah.
it was at first, and I was
Because
like,
it's a
"Whoa."
cartoon. The meep. Like
Yeah. Well, they do like have you
Roadrunner.
heard the little twittery noises that they
Oh,
make when they're in flight?
only like recordings.
Yeah, but it's super weird when you hear it like, at night and
Yeah.
at dusk and stuff. And like they do that where I used to keep my horse in the fields.
Cool.
And I would just be out there with pits, and there's little woodcocks just, doing their thing in the air,
yeah.
That was
a
like,
harpy eagle. I would want to see.
Oh, yeah.
The weird
Like
calls
ostriches. I would love to see an ostrich in the wild. Like people, I forget that like they live in the wild,
big
and
ones,
like you
yeah.
can see a herd of ostriches because they call them herds. They don't
No,
call them
I'd
flocks.
pass. I'll
You
pass
know,
on the
of
ostriches.
ostriches.
Cassowary,
Something-
but not an ostrich.
I've seen it. I've seen the ostrich. I would say for the calls one, the weirdest one that I have seen is definitely the wampu fruit dove, because they say wampu. And so, yeah, but
Doves make weird noises. Like
they
in general,
always
people-
do. And so it was
freaky
like
babies.
way out, like echoey, and it's just like wampu. Like, and it's just like, what was that?
Where was that?
Wampu. Australia.
Okay.
Far
Australia's-
northeast.
I'd love to.
Yeah, Queensland. Yeah, I checked off so many freaking birds in Australia.
I feel like I saw
Some of the
every
names.
species of heron in Costa Rica. I have all of them. I've seen every heron. I
That's
swear.
awesome. So that's like a nice lifeless thing. You're like, I've seen every heron in Costa Rica,
Yeah. The tricolored heron apparently is pretty rare, and we saw that one day, and one lady was freaking out. At the time, I didn't know how significant.
Isn't that
but I suppose
fun?
it is.
You're like, why is she
Yeah.
having a fit about this? And then you find out later, it's like, oh, I should have been having a fit too.
I should have.
apparently, because-
Yeah.
Alrighty, so going back to like the actual birding. So we talked about the life list, kind of my nemesis bird, what you guys want to see too. So what would you say are the top 3 things that you need to start your new bird watching hobby? Because I'm sure we have everybody now convinced that they're like, maybe I should do this and die in a
something
car
in
with
this,
Katy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what are the top 3 things you would need?
So I would say binoculars, just super helpful. It really is a game changer. And the nice thing is that binoculars are in everybody's budget. You really can find
all
even a cheapy plastic pair is still going to give you a better view than naked eye, all the way up until, once that costs more than your mortgage.
Yeah.
And then I would say if you're starting birding, a local field guide would be good, whether it's so for us, for our ornithology class, we had the Peterson guide, but it was Eastern and Central North America. This is a little bit more concentrated than maybe the Sibley, which is really the Bible, of birding.
It is.
And that covers like, well, I mean, you can get this.
Bible.
Sibley.
There's
It
a
is.
Bible,
It really
too,
is.
I like the trifold like guides.
Yeah,
that are, like,
something like that.
waterproof
That's
and-
going to give you a view into the local birds. Because if you can get a handle on that, that just teaches you how to go birding. And
Yeah.
that's really helpful to, and if you can recognize the common species, that's how you can spot the rare ones, because it's not something you've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say
elimination.
exactly, that's how, especially for gulls and things like that, you always say, like, if you can learn the common ones, and I mean learn, unfortunately for gulls, like learn the common ones, then you can pick out, well, that one has a weird colored eye, or that one doesn't have tertial crests, that one must be it, anyway.
Gulls, man, my nemesis bird for identifying them. And like warblers are just, well, the warblers mostly with the calls, but dang.
Yeah, you got to get one of them bird CDs that you put in your car. And
I have it I think it's still packed away, but I have a bird Bible. And it is literally called the Bird Bible.
I know, I got it from my mom.
Yeah, and it's huge, and you flip it, and then
you can kill a man with how heavy it is.
No,
oh my god!
It's really cool though.
And you hit the sound thing on the side because it has like the numbers, and then you hit it on the side, and it does all the calls.
It's every bird species in North America and their call.
Yeah.
Is it like including like rare stuff? Do you know how many?
Oh yeah. No, it's everything. No, I'm talking. It's huge. Like, and it's so heavy.
Yeah. It's pretty.
I'll send a picture to you. It's huge. I don't know where I mean, I got it at Barnes and Noble. Was on sale at like, and that's where whenever I showed Laura,
I don't even know where Barnes and Noble
was.
Where am I supposed to find one of those, Stephen? Find the book.
I will send it to you so you can see what it is pretty cool. Like, even my son, he uses it. Like, he just likes to play with it,
to listen to the sounds. Yeah,
but he just listens to the sounds. No, but I mean, that's everybody starts somewhere. So
guides, binoculars.
It's two.
Honestly, like, in the age of technology, I would say an eBird account is good.
I was going to say the same thing. A phone.
Because then you can you can look for eBird. You can look at hotspots.
Yep.
You can see where the best place is to see the most species, or you can search by species. You really want to see a snowy owl that winter. Like, here's where you can go see them. And then that also gives you an idea of, what's in the area, what kind of times. You can look at historical data. So if you want to look at your local park and like see what's been seen there in the last 10 years, the data is there, which is really unique,
Yeah.
It's an awesome
I like to get an idea of what I'm looking for. Like, what has somebody seen recently that's been really cool?
Yeah. Like, I recently went and visited our friend Julia that we went to school with.
Mm-hmm.
She lives in northern Michigan, and I had a couple of target birds I wanted to see. So I put in, northern hawk owl, which actually you can't see on eBird because it's a secretive species. So a difference, like Bohemian waxwing is one of the ones we wanted to see. And it gives you just a pop-up of like, okay, I know I'm staying here. Here are the next closest places that I could potentially see Bohemian waxwing, and that have been seen in the last couple of days. So it's a great way to plan, anytime you got to travel somewhere or go anywhere, even if you want to do it locally.
There's so many good apps. Like, if you have a phone, there's so many good apps that are free. eBird, the Audubon app lets you download all the identification stuff, so you don't even have to have internet access to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Merlin does the same thing.
Yep,
BirdNet is good. Merlin does a photo ID as well. I mean, it's not perfect, but it is pretty good.
Is there a free version of Merlin, or Merlin's pay?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's free. Yeah,
because both Merlin and eBird are run by the Cornell of Ornithology, which is an open access free. And they will never charge for that. They've said multiple times, like, we'll never have people pay for that.
So many apps.
Yeah, there's definitely some good ones. It just depends on what you want to do with it. I like to use probably eBird, just obviously for what it does, but also Merlin is great just because it has all the species account, and then what's like regular there during the time of year, and all the calls are right there, and the photo ID, and they also do
helpful for me.
Sound ID now. Yes. It's a new feature that came out, so stuff like that's helpful.
Which I use before
in the work,
I use BirdNet for call ID, but I think that's also that's the programming that was used to create what's now in. Is it Merlin? Yeah, Merlin. Who does the ID? Yeah. But BirdNet is like their OG.
Yeah, BirdNet has been a long standard too. And just like I said, any of those, just depending on what you want to get out of it. People send me photos to ID all the time, and I can get them for the most part, obviously, unless they're somewhere in the world I've never been. And
I was say that. I think that's any animal person. Any animal person is like, what is that? Like,
but I have my own bird lady. There's a lady at work, and now she's just a volunteer, but on our days off, thank goodness I okayed it with her. I was like, listen, I know that I'm your manager, but on your days off, can I send you pictures to identify? And she's like, of course.
Yeah. Please do.
I'm so glad you have a bird lady, Laura. That's very good.
Thank you, Emily.
Yeah.
We've
Laura's
all got
own
one.
personal bird lady.
For a lot of people, it's me.
Yeah. So you said that you binoculars. So the big question: binoculars versus scope. Which do you prefer?
Yeah. So for me, it's definitely binoculars. Mostly, I would say probably because I use binoculars on my job and I don't use a scope because it's a perfect way to get yourself seasick and not see anything. So binoculars are definitely the go-to for me. Scopes are really helpful when you're doing things like sea watching from shore, or long range stuff, shorebirds, trying to read color bands on banded birds, things like that you really can't do with binoculars. But in terms of accessibility and ease, like a scope it's a commitment, especially if you're going a long distance. So that's why things like sea watching or just, standing on the shore and trying to look at banded birds, which you can do for a job. Those are things that definitely require a scope and are much better suited for. But for me, it's always going to be binoculars.
So then if it's binoculars and in binos, I would say, because I've talked to a lot of people that have wanted to start getting into birding and everything, and they always ask the same questions. What's with all the numbers? They don't really understand it. So what is the basic advice that you could give someone who wants to buy their first pair of binos? Because it can be very intimidating.
Your first pair
of binos. I remember my first
treasured moment.
Right?
Mine were given to me by my grandfather, and they were this wide on my face, and that sort of thing. But hey, free binoculars are free binoculars, right? Yeah. So again, a little bit of what you want to do with that as you get more specific. But in general, most good decent pairs of binoculars that are for birding, not little cheapy ones that you can get for hunting. Sometimes people get little plastic pairs.
Yeah, the teeny tiny compacts.
Right, they're little micro binoculars.
Yeah,
I would say the general standard magnification is 8x42. So 8 is the number of times magnified, so it's 8 times magnified, and then 42 is the objective lens. So it's the width of the binocular lens at the end in millimeters. So it's 42 millimeters, and the bigger the number, the wider the binocular is, the more light it lets in, which makes things easier to identify. So you want to keep that in mind when you're looking at binoculars, because a lot of times maybe less expensive pairs or ones that you see in magazines or things that you get advertised, they're 12 by 30s or something like that.
Gosh.
And a 12X is a very that's a pretty high power for a standard binocular.
Yes.
And to only have a 30 millimeter, it's light is going to be really hard. You're not going to be able to see anything as soon as the sun starts to set and things like that. So you want to balance that magnification with enough light that you're being able to see through the binocular.
And too, I mean, the more the magnification, because I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, is the more magnification you have, the stiller. You have to be so still.
Exactly. So I use 10Xs when I am at sea, which I really like. And I worked to shorebirds and that kind of stuff for a long time. And 10Xs are just nicer to see the detail. But when I went to McGee with my 10Xs and I'm trying to see a tiny little warbler in a giant tree, I'm I cannot find this friggin' bird because my binoculars are too high powered for something like that. So that's why the 8Xs are just a really good standard. And a lot of folks that I work with at sea that are using binoculars use an 8X. It's perfectly fine. I just I've always used 10Xs, but I think if for my next purchase, I will probably buy an 8X.
Mine are 8 by 42. That's what I thought.
There it is. Mine are 10 by 42, so a little bit less light, but we don't observe past sunset anyway. So for me, it just is a good fit.
Yeah.
But I mean, scopes are great. For a good standard scope.
Job.
Yeah. Right. They're 20 to 60X, which is a big jump, but they're also in 82 in width. So, you can see good stuff with that kind of thing.
If it's stationary.
Yeah. Or you're fast enough with the scope. Because like I said, people use them for sea watching, for migrating stuff, but you gotta know what you're doing. Because they move so fast.
Yes. So we don't want to bash any different product lines or anything,
yes,
but
I'm just kidding.
Yes, we do. But we already talked about there are some really expensive binos out there. Do you think that they're worth it? Yeah, I'm talking for anybody who's listening doesn't know, thousands of dollars for binos. Yeah. Do you think is it worth it? Do you find it worth it?
So I don't have binoculars that cost more than 4 figures. Because when I bought my original pair, I was a grad student and, the budget is smaller.
Very minimal.
birding is a lifestyle, but I have to afford to eat.
Yeah.
Right. And there's considerations to be made depending on the brand. Some of them have unlimited lifetime guarantees, so they'll fix anything regardless of owner and that sort of thing. And for me, that was really important. So the ones that I got, unfortunately, they don't make anymore, but they're still being serviced by a company that bought them. So that's really helpful. But
cool.
But I would say if you're serious about birding, you can get a good pair of binoculars for no more than $300. And we're talking ones like from Nikon that have an unlimited lifetime guarantee, that are waterproof, that will really do the job. And it is an investment for sure, but they are significantly better than the $100 pair. There's definitely like a gradient there of like the $100 pair is like, it is a binocular. It will do it. But if you are able to add that extra $100 or $200 to it, it will make a significant difference in your vision.
Especially even things like fog, like anti-fog and the waterproof, because the number of times, I mean, that's what people don't quite think about. I mean, if you really get into birding, like the number of times that I have either dropped mine, because like you go out first thing in the morning, I've like dropped it in puddles, or I've like
sat on them. I mean,
it's
fallen out of your backpack.
My first pair of binoculars, my mom lent to me. They were given to her by her mom. So they were probably from the 70s or probably the 70s. Yeah, so they're ginormous, and
fragile.
I took them to Costa Rica because we didn't have anything else to take. I took them with me. I dropped them in the canal and they were destroyed because the water got in there and messed with the lenses. And my mom was so sad and I felt so terrible, but
I mean, accidents happen. And so, having a binocular that has that sort of warranty will make a difference. Mine, I mean, you have to send them in, and I've been meaning to send mine in for literally years to get fixed for a few things. But I mean, so those brands at the medium end that basically I use are among Nikon or something like Vortex.
That's what mine are. Mine are Vortex.
Yeah, they recently bought Eagle Optics. Otherwise, I would have said that one as an option too. But and then the other end is Swarovski and Zeiss and Leica and binoculars like that. And if you have the money to spend on it, absolutely go for it. They are, I mean, unmatched.
I will say Swarovski, they have some sweet looking ones. Like if you want to get
the Crystal Company?
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh, cool.
These are the ones that are like
I'm not even looking at binoculars that cost that much money.
Thousands of dollars.
Those cost, it depends on your house, but probably at least twice your mortgage.
Yeah, and it's the same, but they look snazzy. Like they have they're all leather bound.
They usually have really good warranties, and they do last for a long time. Like they're meant to last. They're meant to be had for a while, and they have a very loyal fan base.
They should.
Yeah. And there's other brands and stuff too. I'm just trying to give it.
Yeah, those I would say those are on the high end. Those are probably the two most popular brands.
Yeah, Leica makes a number of smaller, lightweight, compact ones. They're still really high in quality, so they don't sell generally as many of the bigger pairs like Swarovski and Zeiss do, and then there's photography that comes with birding too, and that's I'm starting to get into that a little bit, but I know that will never be my main purpose for birding. Did you just look up the pair of binoculars?
I was gonna say Laura's jaw just dropped. We both were like, oh, she just saw the price.
Optics. Yep.
Yeah.
$3,699.
If you have the money to spend, get yourself a nice pair of binoculars. It's your life. Live your best life and stuff. But if you don't, here's the other options.
Listen, though, guys, if you've got that much money and you're listening to this podcast, you better support us on Patreon.
Okay. You have a moral obligation at this point.
Or at least buy us a pair, too.
Yeah. If anybody's got that kind of money to be thrown around, help a girl out.
I mean, mine are Vortex,
and pairs of Nikons.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
mine are Vortex, and I really like them. The last pair I had was an REI brand, and those are the ones I had with me in Australia. And then Laura and I, we were up on a ridge in Arkansas, and the eye cap just fell off. No idea where it went, and I had those for probably almost 10 years, and it just popped off and just gone. And I'm like, well, that's that. And so I had to buy a new one because it's gone. REI doesn't even make that magnification. They don't even do that anymore. And so I was like, that's done now. So the ones I've had now for a little while, they're Vortex. They're good. I mean, they're really nice.
And Vortex it's a scale too. They have ones that are a few $100s, the mid-range, maybe $700 to $800, and they have ones that are four figures. And you just, what's in your budget? and what are you trying to do with it? So what's your budget will determine obviously your price point and what sort of options are available to you. And then you can decide, do I want an 8X or a 10X or, what are the other magnifications you want within that scope?
So last question then for you, Allison. If you could give one piece of advice to all of our new bird nerds out there.
All of you, because everybody is now officially a birder.
We had to have convinced them. There had to have been something in this episode that everybody's like, maybe I should get more involved in this.
Hopefully you are at least thinking about birding in the sense of like, I never thought about that. Or you're right, I do have a favorite bird.
Mm-hmm.
Or my grandma does love the robins, like that sort of thing.
So what's that one piece of advice then that you could give all the new bird nerds?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would probably say just have a sense of adventure when it comes to birding. Birding can take you anywhere. It can change your life if you let it. I mean, it certainly changed my life. Literally would not be where I am without it. And it was, a college class that turned into a hobby that turned into a little bit of a session. And it's my career now, and that all.
Wait, hold on, pause. You said obsession, please. You haven't shown, at least those on Twitch or that are watching the live stream, your shirt. And we can describe it. Can you show me your hoodie that you have on?
All the books behind me, these are all just bird related. Just birds. And my sweatshirt, thank you to my mom a couple of Christmases ago, that says, I just freaking love birds, okay?
Which is amazing. I mean,
everything is about birds in my house.
Yeah.
Just to the artwork, and just bless my husband for all that he allows me to do within the confines of our home that are related to birds. But, I like to think that something like birding is a positive thing in people's lives. You want hobbies that either, make you happy or at best make you a better person. And I feel like birding is really, obviously there's downsides to it, and you can dive into sketchy Facebook groups about all the bad people and the things that birders do and that sort of thing. But I think in of itself, birding is a positive experience, and it's just fun. Like it really, you can have those moments by yourself on a boat, seeing a bird like that for the first time, or shared experiences. And I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Being able to connect with people and have those positive experiences that make your life better. Yeah, and like birding is how you do it.
But like you said, it can be for anybody.
That's what it's the accessibility. It's and the variability. There aren't many hobbies that you're like, okay, you can do this alone. You can do this with other people.
You can do it with your kids.
You can go to the same place 4 different times a year and see 4 completely different sets of birds if you live.
You can spend lots of money. You can spend no money. You can
It's
go to festivals and really get into it, or you can just go to your favorite park and keep track of the seasonality and what's breeding in your backyard and then what's there. There's just, you can make it whatever you want it to be. And I feel like it's, maybe I'm generalizing because I'm a little biased, but I feel like birding is one of the few hobbies where you really can go all the way in, or you can just have a bird feeder in your backyard and Mr. and Mrs. Cardinal come every weekend and it's great. And that's it. And that's okay because everyone does it differently.
Yeah.
Well, Allison, thank you so much for coming on and just bird nerding
so much
out
to think about. Right?
Well, and this is an episode that Laura and I talked a while ago that we're we need to do a bird episode, and we definitely need to have Allison on. What is that noise? My neighbors. But yeah, we definitely knew we wanted to do this episode. So thank you so much for coming on. Make sure you guys, Allison, do you want to give out your Twitter handle? We'll share hers on ours as well.
Yeah, it's at AP Black 32.
And she always does share bird nerd pictures for sure.
I do. You can follow me on Instagram too. I'm private, but you can follow me and I'll accept you. Yeah, I usually chronicle my my birding expeditions, which are fun. When I'm out at sea and the sort of cyclic of when I go back out to sea. It's
when I'm out at sea.
When I'm out at sea, I'm posting photos of the cool birds and the whales and the dolphins and all that.
Listen, folks, we knew Allison before she was cool.
I'm still not cool, but that's okay.
We knew her when she was still a horse girl.
Still a horse girl.
She's still a horse girl.
Still a horse girl. Just the literal definition of a birder now. I've been elevated to this status. Thank you guys so much for having me on. It was so much fun.
Thank you again.
For the record, I actually listen to your podcast while I'm on the boats, so I haven't caught up in a while because I'm on for 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So I'll literally just play you guys play you guys on my speaker out on the top of the ship, and that's how I catch up on all the episodes. Is when I'm on watch. I just play
so
you guys.
fun.
As I'm
no wonder we
watching
get
birds.
such weird I
Random
wonder where it
towns.
says you're downloading them from.
Yeah,
Like
we'll have to
I
look.
have to download them ahead of time because we can't stream
Okay,
things
okay.
when
I
we're
was
on
Okay,
gonna
the
okay.
say,
internet,
like, where
so
would it
it's
say?
Probably.
The Atlantic
Probably.
Ocean. What? Who's
Yeah.
downloading?
Sometimes international waters.
Who's
so,
downloading? It's like, I don't know, I think it says 37 countries and one ocean. We're like,
Yeah, it's
what?
like just a
What?
dropped pin in the middle of the Atlantic, basically. Yeah, so you guys come with me on my trips. You just didn't know it.
Aw.
Yay!
Hey. All right, guys, make sure you follow us on social media. Again, we will go ahead and share Allison's handles and everything so that you guys can follow her as well. And then tune in next week where we'll be doing another episode.
On fun stuff.
I was trying to think. I was going to give a teaser, but I don't even remember what the next one's going to be. It'll be a surprise
Nature.
to me too, folks.
Nature.
Yeah,
It'll be
nature.
about nature.
Nature.
Yay, nature. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.